Good morning, everybody. Who was here yesterday? Raise your hands. Yeah, good to see you back. Thank you for coming back. And who is new today? Good, good. So we have new faces. I have good news for you. I'm going to have a recap of what we discussed yesterday, and I will put you in a situation for you that is new today. You will know exactly why we are here. But first, I have a video for you. Who wants to start the day watching a video? Let's do that.
We have got a problem. A few problems, actually. We're overproducing, overcrowding, and overheating. We've got aging roadways, aging power grids, aging everything. Kind of bombing me out, Clive, no, wait, it gets worse. We also have the age-old problem of bias in the workplace.
Really? Never heard of it. Seriously? I haven't heard of it.
The question is, who's going to fix all of this? An actor? Probably not. You know who can solve it? Business. That's right. The best run businesses can make the world run better because solving big problems is what business does best. Really good. It's just good business. So let's grow more food with less water and make healthcare more healthy. It's okay. I'll find a doctor. What do we got here? Let's take on the wage gap, the opportunity gap, the achievement gap. Together we can tackle every elephant in the room and save the rhino while we're at it. Because whatever the problem, business can help. And I know you can help them do it.
All right, everybody. So that's exactly why we are here. The world is full of problems. And we are here because we have a solution. And the solution is artificial intelligence. But not any artificial intelligence. You're talking about an artificial intelligence that can be used with a purpose. So for those of you that were here yesterday, I want you to start interacting. So the microphone, please, for someone that tells me, what are we doing here? What's the objective of the session from yesterday and from today? Anybody wants to start sharing? Yes.
So, like yesterday, we were talking about how we can take different approaches to sustainability and how businesses often compromise on it because they focus on profit and how they're now changing, especially with government regulations, to be able to be more sustainable.
How business can help to build a sustainable future. That's exactly it. Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure to be here yesterday. I represent a company called SAP. It's a software company. It has more than 50 years. And for the past 50 years, this company is using technology to help companies to progress, to go globally, even governments to be at their best. But now we realize that any technology we do must exist for a sustainable future. Sustainability should be embedded in everything we do. That's why the session today is AI and sustainability. We want to bring these two topics together, and our definition of artificial intelligence from yesterday is that artificial intelligence is a superpower that can make you a superhero. Does that make sense? Remember Iron Man? We spoke about that yesterday. Iron Man was Tony Stark. And he had Jarvis, which is the artificial intelligence. But who was the superhero? Jarvis or Tony Stark? Tony Stark, right? So artificial intelligence is just a tool that makes you at your best for you to achieve your purpose. So that was our definition, and for the sake of today's session, we're going to learn about this superpower. We're going to deep dive a little bit more to understand what kind of powers do you have at your hand. We also spoke about the balance between the top line, bottom line, and the new dimension of success for any business, which is the green line. Right? It's not only about a company selling, making revenue, or focusing on the profits. It's also taking care of the planet, taking care of the community, and making sure that they do good business. This is what we spoke yesterday. Is there any question from yesterday that you have burning with you today? So we can continue. Also, we spoke about finding your passion. Remember? So now you know your identity. You have an identity to help the world solve big challenges. But now you need to align your passion to something bigger. And we introduced the Sustainable Development Goals to help you understand from 17 big goals or issues that humanity is facing, and how you can use those goals to align your passion to it. So maybe your passion is around education or climate change, or even solve the problem of water or life on land. Whatever it is that you can do, you have a framework, a blueprint that the United Nations created here that can help us achieve a better and more sustainable future for everybody. So always remember, when we do this conversation, it's not about the technology, it's about you. And it's about you using the technology to achieve some of those goals. Perhaps one of the goals, or maybe more of these goals. And yesterday we learned that there is a cause and effect between them. So people were talking about focusing in education. So if you have education, you will have less poverty. And if you have less poverty, you can tackle zero hunger and so on and so forth. So there is a correlation between those goals. And the sooner you understand that, the sooner you can incorporate that to your life, the sooner you will be able to live your purpose. Who wants to live your purpose? Say yes. Say yes or no. Yeah. Just do any reaction. Are you awake today? Are you ready?
Yeah.
Good. So this is a framework that helps us to build things that matter, right? And we spoke about strategy. And any organization or any individual that wants to achieve something in their life, they need a strategy. And strategy have different dimensions, different perspectives. The first perspective of strategy is when we have enablers, which is people and culture, to achieve something big. But also we need business processes. We need processes. Nothing happens in isolation. You need processes to bring things together. And then when you have all those processes together, you can achieve outcomes for different stakeholders. And the difference here is that we're not only looking at outcomes as a financial measure for shareholders, for the owners of a business. It's not that. We are looking at outcomes that will cover social value, economic value, and environmental value. And what we were teaching yesterday is that if you master the triple bottom line, this is called the triple bottom line. It means that you are able now to build something that is bigger than you, that is bigger than your own company, and that transcends even the frontiers of your country. You can be an instrument of good to the world, because the world needs that desperately. Are you with me? So today, the objective is to deep dive. We understand the strategy, we understand the foundation, and we feel the burden. Yesterday, the session gave you a feeling why it's important to use artificial intelligence with a purpose. But today, we will deep dive into this artificial intelligence technology, and we will understand how the technology can actually be available to you in order to achieve the good that you've been looking for. Let's do that? For us to do that, we must understand an important concept that's now taking the world by storm, which is the concept of ESG. Say with me, ESG. The ESG stands for environmental, which covers climate change, zero waste, zero emissions, zero inequality. Then we have social, which is the social responsibility of businesses, but also diversity, inclusion. Who believes that diversity and inclusion is important for anything we do? Imagine if we were in a session that we only had only boys or only girls, or actually we just have one kind of person that works in one specific area. It doesn't achieve the full potential. So if you want to have a full potential in everything you do, you need to work with diversity and inclusion. And this country, the United Arab Emirates, is a great example of diversity and inclusion, because we have several countries coming together, and this way we can grow, we can learn from each other. And finally, we have governance. Governance is what organizations are looking for in order to make sure that they do good business. And when it comes to governance, it's important to remember that cybersecurity, how your data is being handled, and also regulation, the role of the government in order to help us understand where exactly to focus as individuals and as a business is very important. And regulation when it comes to climate change is coming very strong to any organization. So if you're thinking of your future, what you're going to do in your future, you must take into consideration that the world is changing. Climate change is restructuring everything in the physical world. And artificial intelligence is going into the digital world and also reshaping everything we do. So it's a great opportunity you have today to make a decision of how you're going to use the powers that you're learning here in order to make a difference. You have the best time in the world to come up with an idea, execute that idea, and make sure that your idea is being used to help people. Is that something that is good for you? Do you want to help people? Do you want to make a difference? And that's what our session is all about. Let me explain to you how we can organize this information. We have different perspectives here to learn. Number one, businesses and organizations that are using artificial intelligence for good, they need to take into consideration the accountability and the compliance. Think about this. Accountability and compliance means that they have the responsibility to do something properly. And government will ensure that they do so. Otherwise, they are out of business. But that's not enough. They have also to look into their profitability and create efficiency that is so much more powerful and more interesting for the world than basically just operate as usual. And finally, we're talking about innovation, and a kind of innovation that tap into the desirability of new consumers, people that want to consume something that is more sustainable. If we look at that as a 3x3 chart, and we deep dive into this, we will understand that the combination between compliance and accountability will have license to operate. So more important than ever is that organizations must secure their license to operate. What does that mean? Anybody wants to share what do you think it means, a license to operate of a business? Yes.
It's like a certificate that says, yeah, you've met all the rules, so you can work now and you can, operate.
That's good. Anybody else? Let's go from that side. I will even bring the mic to you guys. My sessions is always like that. I will always push you guys to interact. If you don't interact, you are missing a great opportunity. Anybody wants to talk? I will pick you guys if you don't. There you go.
Enable the organizations to have a legal infrastructure. That's
Great infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
That's a very good point. Thank you. What's your name again?
Zaid.
Zaid. Anybody else from that side now? Let's activate some of you. Let's go to the back and you. There you go.
I think it's the ability to operate and having like the licensed people to achieve something. I think having a good base to start a new thing. I think that, I think about a lot of things when you talk about license to operate, you can't operate unless you have a good base, and that's how I feel about it.
It's the permission, right?
Yes.
Exactly. So do you think you can just start a company and operate without permission? It's not like that. So big companies, they are worried that their permission or their license to operate might be taken back because they are not able to prove that they are really compliant. It means that they are doing things the way it should be done. So in order for them to achieve that, they will have to go to the second level here, which is profitability. And efficiency. And when you look at that, there is a advantage. Imagine you are in a race. Imagine someone in that race is running with the best shoes ever, right? And that shoes creates like a, good traction, and that person will have an advantage in that race. Or any sports for that sake. If you have the right equipment, you have an advantage. In business is the same. So if you want to achieve a level of profitability, if you want to achieve the outcome that you expected, you need to have efficiency. That's creating a competitive edge. But now that we have to make sure that the resources we use are being handled properly, the way we create efficiency is different, and that's what we're going to discuss today. We will learn how to create efficiency in face of climate change. And finally, it's about the green consumer. Do you want to use a product that is bad for the environment? Yes or no? Hmm? Hmm? Even if it's cheap, people will use it. What if the government put taxation on the plastic, for instance, that makes the price go higher? So I think price anymore will not be the issue anymore, right? I think governments will act on things that are not good, but also the new generation is coming often, and we've done research to understand that they don't want to consume. They are even willing to pay a little bit more if they realize that this is good for the planet, and they understand that this is done in a proper way. So we call them the green consumers. It's a new breed of consumers that will create opportunities of a lifetime for anybody that is going into business. Fair enough? So I want to deep dive now in the intersection of accountability and compliance, so we'll understand what is behind this issue. The first thing here for us to understand is that you cannot improve what you cannot measure, right? If you want to improve anything in your life or in your business, you will have to start by measuring it. And when it comes to climate change, emissions of carbon, or the bad that you do, or the bad that your products will do to the world, you will need to monitor that in a different way. And that's where data is important. Data is the foundation for a sustainable future. Without data, we cannot have sustainability in a business. And that's why when we look into what kind of data we want to collect, we must understand the concept of scope 1, 2, and 3. Who have heard of that before? Raise your hands. So it's good that's going to be new to you now, a new concept that if you understand that concept, you will find out how much everything needs to improve in order for us to be at the point where this scope 1, 2, and 3 is handled. So basically, it works like this. At the top here, you have carbon footprint, right? So different type of gases that businesses and operations are emitting in the world. And you have 3 layers to care about. The number one is the direct emission. This is what's called scope 1. Basically, combustion of fossil fuels or company vehicles. Basically, you are in control. So if you change how you use your fuels, you go into a renewable kind of source, and your fleet of cars that is going around is actually using renewable sources, then you have that scope 1 under control. Scope 2 is when you are having indirect emissions from purchased energy. This is very common, right? So you have here different purchase of electricity, heat, or steam, and it still is in your control. You just, instead of buying, energy from a fossil fuel type of source, you go for a renewable. You just change where you buy it from, correct? What about this one here? Other indirect emissions. The treatment of purchased materials and services. Basically, everything that you produce, everything that you outsource, you buy services from others, and they are also having an emission, and everything that you are renting or your waste or the business trips They are all scope 3. And that's where the problem starts, because nobody takes into account what my product will do to the environment. So if an oil company sells gasoline that is used in your car, and your car is emitting gases which affects the planet, the oil company says, not my problem. It's your problem. You bought the car. You are using my gasoline. But right now, with regulation, and that's why the role of the government is so important, Scope 3 will take into consideration all those emissions, even after your product left your company. When you buy something from a supplier, you will need to make sure that that supplier is actually taking all those things into consideration. That's why one thing connects to the other. Think about this. The scope 1 and 2 of your supplier is your scope 3. And the scope 3 of your customer is your scope 1 and 2. It means that the entire value chain will have to take care of how much emissions they have, because otherwise I will not buy your service and my client will not buy my service. And that's going to be the way business will happen. That's going to be the way business will work. You have a question? Sure. Here you go.
I think it's all a money base. What if we use young innovators to achieve things that will make more sustainable?
Use what, sorry?
Young innovators.
Young and majors.
No, innovator. Like people as our age.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know we could start using Tesla cars, but they're like pretty expensive. It's all a money base. That's what I'm saying about. If you want to reach, like, to like share knowledge with like more range of people, then we need to use things that they use most. Cars. Everyone mostly use cars, and we think we could start from there, but the range of money, like economy, they could less their expectations from that.
Yeah,
Am I
it makes sense.
reaching my
What
point?
she's saying is that there is a cost to living in a world that things are sustainable, right? Cars are more expensive that are electric at the moment, right?
And live.
Or maybe some of the furniture you're going to purchase for your house is going to be more expensive because they are sourced from forests that are not facing deforestation, and so on and so forth. So indeed, it's a big problem we have to solve. And that's why we are having that conversation right now. Because the matter of fact here is that there's no way back.
But we could create a gap between generations. Like us, our age, we could use Tesla cars, or we could create our own ones with less cheaper prices.
Absolutely.
And the previous generation, I'm not talking as a careless person, but I'm saying we need to develop quickly because the world is kind of collapsing. I'm trying to be positive,
It's
but
a
I'm talking
very,
realistic.
very good observation you're making right now. And it's very relevant for all of us to reflect about that. And I give you 3 perspectives to think about what she's mentioning right now. Number 1 is the use of technology. Technology can help us improve a lot of the things we do. So if batteries are cheaper going forward, maybe the electric car will be more accessible than the other ones. So technology gives us, the tool to achieve better outcomes if we have that focus. But that's just one part of the puzzle. The second part of the puzzle is investment. It means that any business, if you want to start a company or if you want to be part of a company, these businesses will need money. And the money will start coming only to those that are able to demonstrate that they are working on these kind of initiatives that reduce the cost of things that are more sustainable and that they launch and distribute things that are sustainable. So investment will come at that cost now. So it will force companies to do that. And third is government. So there is no way back.
I know, but you could bring more efficient people instead of being more workers. Like I could bring more
Automation.
10 people who are like totally efficient. They could give the same results as 100 person. And there I go, winning two sides, people are being selfish when it comes to money. I'm being realistic. Everyone wants to have an income more than outcome, and that's a normal thing. And in consideration, the environment is being collapsing in everywhere. That's what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
So let me play a video for those of you that were not here yesterday. I think it will be very relevant for us to understand, being selfish as humankind and trying to take advantage of everything, all the resources we have to achieve something, what that brought us. Where is the situation we are because of that? I will play a video for you and we'll be on the same page on that. Just a second. Check this out.
With further warming in the coming years, we expect to see new extremes that are unprecedented in magnitude, frequency, timing, or in regions that have never encountered those types of extremes.
You've been telling us for over 3 decades of the dangers of allowing the planet to warm. The world listened, but didn't hear.
It is unequivocal that human influence has warmed the atmosphere, ocean, and the land. We confirm that human-caused emissions of greenhouse gases are the main driver of global warming.
Urgent action must be
Climate
taken.
change is here now, but we are also here now. And if we don't act, who will?
Just 1 second. Do you understand why we're talking about sustainability today? It reached to a point, and this is a very new report. It's the red flag for humanity. We humans are the ones who cause the problem. So climate change is here. It's real. We increased the temperature on Earth already for 1.1 degrees Celsius. And the target is 1.5 until the end of the decade. Otherwise, the impact on Earth will be a devastation. If you think COVID-19 was bad, imagine the worst effects of climate change. So there is a reason why we want to use technology with more purpose. We want to focus on innovation that creates an environment where we want to live in. So we have to choose the future we want to live in because the current reality is not that good. And to your point, it's the selfishness of people that brought us to this problem. And now intelligent solutions must exist in order for us to solve it. And it's not about the past generation. Unfortunately, we will be living with the consequences of their decisions, but we are here now, and we have the ability to make a difference. That's why we have to understand some of those concepts, and we have to internalize that, and we need to work on it in order for us to be the difference we want to see. Right? The scope 1, 2, and 3 is a very good model for us to measure the problem. That's why, because if you connect who buys and who sells, then maybe the kind of products we will have in the end will be products that are more responsibly done. And that's the focus we have here. Yes.
In the beginning, if there are still companies who somehow don't conform to this, the companies that do conform, won't they still price their sustainable products higher? Because currently it's still hard to be able to conform to all of this, so they have to undergo a lot of costs to adhere to this. And also because people will be forced to buy sustainable products because of climate change, won't some companies maybe try to exploit that and try to price them higher and gain maximum revenue out of it?
It's a very good point. I think businesses will have to operate in a smarter way. And the good news is that consumers, people like you and me, we are getting smarter about our decisions as well. So the very fact you're making that question, it means that you worry about the things you consume. And not only you, your parents, your family, so everybody around you will actually be more cautious about those things. And the future generations, this is going to be important for them because they are living in a world that is threatened. That was not the case before, but now what's happening to the world will require massive action. You saw in the video, it talks about taking action now. And for over 3 decades, they've been telling us as business leaders, as government leaders, and people didn't hear. And now there's no way back. Either we do action now or we'll be doomed. So yes, prices will go up for those who are not able to innovate enough. There is what they call a green premium, a premium on everything that you build that is more friendly to the environment. However, we need technology to reduce the cost of that innovation so that when it reaches to people, it's even cheaper because it's using recyclable, reuse materials. So there are many ways that we're going to discuss today that help us achieve that. So yes, it's possible to have efficiency and drive profitability in a world where we have to take care of the environment. And the technology that we have available today, this is the key for us to achieve that.
Do you think it's also harder for new businesses to be able to, start because they first have to make sure their new ideas conform with these sustainable protocols, and they need to have the technology as a small entity to be able to deal with it from the beginning?
Actually, it's the opposite. I think it's easier because now you have a new wave of consumption. You have a new market. So if there is a new market, you can actually take advantage of that and create something that is smarter than what exists today. So the entire physical world is up for change. The entire digital world is constantly changing. We have things today that didn't exist a few years ago. So there's never been a better time for us to use the technology and start new businesses and create companies that are existing for doing good. And that's why we are exploring this session today once again. So let's understand if we have to measure scope 1, 2, and 3, what happens? We need to look into the need of data to do that. And here is an example of a dashboard that you can deep dive on that data, all the information that you have, the credit quality, the ratings from the ESG by sector, so you can deep dive on that data in a way that helps you to make informed decisions. So it's about data, but also the analysis of that data in an intelligent way, so you can make decisions to help your business handle this kind of situation. And not only that, it's also about creating simulation, scenarios. So what if I don't achieve my targets? What if the consumption will go higher? What if the emissions of my CO2 goes to a level that is not expected? What's going to happen to my company, the financials of my company, and the life of the people that is in my company? So this concept of dashboarding is essential for us to deep dive and learn and make better decisions. And any company will have to embed sustainability as a new dimension of success. And when it comes to a company, we have three things we have to do. Number one is to assess information on the CO2 footprint of their inputs and products. So everything that comes as an input, you have to assess that. You need to do that to evaluate operations and do benchmarks. So if I'm operating in the UAE and Saudi Arabia, which operation is consuming the most? Where I can change? Where I can focus on to optimize, which is the third point. Optimize operations to minimize the CO2 footprint and improve the product portfolio. And organizations, they work in processes. You have processes that are from designing a product to operating a product. You have lead to cash when you sell a specific product. Source to pay. When you source the material you need to build your product, that's where you can control what kind of material you're using. And finally, record to report. All the information that your business is generating and how you can use that information in order to measure and control and optimize your operations. This is another example of how this analytical view could look like. We're talking about artificial intelligence that helps you to manage the purchased energy, the direct emissions, purchased good, transportation emissions. So everything that is at your power to learn needs to be displayed in a dashboard, so that in that dashboard you have control and you can deep dive into details. So you know which plant, if you are in a manufacturing business, which plant is generating what kind of product, what kind of loss size unit, and so on and so forth. So the granularity of the data, the details of the data, will give you the power in order for you to change things. We're talking about superpowers. Data using dashboards like that is a very important superpower that you can master. Yes.
Can you technically use artificial intelligence to predict what your carbon emissions will be if you grow and how they will change according to other companies? Could you technically use that?
Absolutely. Not only carbon footprint, but different indicators, as you can see here. These kind of dashboards can go in different directions. We have things like governance, things like the planet, total emissions, but also you go around and you see people, inequalities, or the prosperity of the business. So it's important to have data not only in one dimension of the issue that we're talking about. Across all dimensions, we will need the data and the correlation of the data. So maybe the data that you have on the planet comes from how you're handling your people. And that's affecting the prosperity, not only of your company, but the community around you. So it's a cause and effect relationship when it comes to data analysis. So we need to understand that the more data we have, the better we organize that data, the more effective you are to achieve the goals you have to achieve. And here, more examples that, granularity of the data gives you details. Because the world of business is not that simple, right? Sometimes we think of our own area of scope as the focus. But I'm sure all of you here will be part of global businesses in the future. Or maybe you are already part of a family that is in a global businesses. And this situation requires you to have data across the world and correlate that data. And that's where this kind of systems must be implemented so that you can have control of everything you do and you can build the sustainable future that you're talking about. Now, let's move on and look into more applications of artificial intelligence to create efficiency. And here we have an important concept, which is the circular economy. What is a circular economy? It's an economy that you take into consideration in a responsible way how you source your products to produce, how you produce them, a responsible production, a responsible consumption, so that you take care that your customers are customers that are using products that are responsibly done. But instead of just disposing that, like what happens today, you use your iPhone, what happens to your iPhone at the end of the life of the product? Is it disposed, or can we return and reuse that kind of product? So there is a new economy that is being built around the circularity. It's not only take, make, use, and dispose. Now we must create products that you are able to return, that you are able to reuse. So this is the research, recovery, and reuse. The clothes that you're wearing right now, the shoes you have, everything we have as products, they must be part of this circularity. In that way, we will face situations like that. The world, according to data, is actually extracting more and reusing less. And this is part of the problem. The world needs circularity in order to solve the big issues that we're discussing here. Right? So we have a strong correlation between emissions associated to making products. So there is more emissions because there are more products being produced. So what if we produce products that are reused, that are recycled? We will produce less. Therefore, we'll emit less gases into the atmosphere. And that's the virtual cycle we are looking for.
I think businesses would also be happy then because that reduces their extraction costs. Because then they just have to reuse the product and, recycle it instead of going and extracting raw materials and then manufacturing it.
Absolutely, that's the idea. So instead of using new materials all the time, you can reuse those materials.
And it reduces the costs, so in turn, their sustainable products will also be reduced.
Very smart.
The cost of it.
That's where you get the efficiency that we're talking about to improve your profits. She has a question. Can you give the mic to her?
It's not a question, it's actually a comment.
Sure.
So what most European countries does, we have an issue with the plastic bottles for the water. We're one of the most countries that use it. So when you pay for the water, you're paying for the water and the bottle. So what the European countries does to encourage the customers to recycle and reuse, they have those machines where they tell you to bring those items back and you get the money you paid on the bottle back. So that's one of the ways to encourage the customer to recycle and reuse.
Great example. Great example. Incentives so that as a community we function better to do the recycling and reusing of products. Absolutely. So if we want to deep dive into this concept of a circular economy and how the technology can help us, if we're talking about a responsible sourcing and marketplace, it means that we ethically connect sources of secondary material demand to supply and maintain the highest value. So basically, we're talking about here tracing back where you are using those materials. The clothes you are using right now, the salmon you eat, where this comes from. So tracing back give us an understanding of the sourcing of all those materials that we are at the end consuming here. So the ability of creating that traceability and ensuring, for instance, that ethical sourcing that don't use child labor is there. That's a big issue for the fashion industry, for instance. Right? So how you make sure that whatever fashion you have, it didn't involve using that kind of labor. This is the kind of importance we want to give here. It's not only about the material, but how also this material is being produced. Here also we have responsible production, which is about the design and production of products. We're talking about provide visibility into product use and fate and insight into material value maintenance or loss at the end of life. Provide material product and customer insights to create new value and develop innovative business models. It's a huge opportunity for new companies or for existing companies to reimagine how they operate. We're talking about the ability to report the materials usage and in a sustainable criteria. Optimize the design for circularity. We have the design city. If you go to the design city right now, Dubai Design District here, the D3, what you're going to find there is a lot of designers that are trying to reimagine products that fit into this new reality of circularity. And that's a huge opportunity for them. And finally, we'll be talking about responsible consumption. So how companies can influence the consumers to make a more sustainable decision. Because if you build sustainable products and you influence the consumers to choose sustainable products, it means that they will not choose the old other products, correct? So it means that you have more demand towards what you do. So you focus on the demand for you, right? And you can show them with feedback of the sentiment. So the feeling and the sentiment of a person towards a brand that is more sustainable is bigger than the feeling and the sentiment and the loyalty of a person that is consuming a brand that is not sustainable. And that's the trend that we're talking about. And finally, and most importantly, resource recovery and reuse. And in here, we're talking about providing insights that the business needs to deliver the collection, the processing, recycling, and composting infrastructure to increase cycling of material flows at their highest value. This is something that today is not easy, right? I'm sure that whatever you throw as a waste very likely don't go into a recycling process. And that's the biggest opportunity we have ahead of us, right? Tracing down these materials, find new sources with these materials, measure and optimize the processing, measure the embedded CO2 of the materials after you use it. So if we are using this facility right now, there is a carbon emission out of the session that we're running today. How we can measure the carbon emission of this facility here, of this event, and actually offset it in different ways. You see what I mean? So it's a responsibility of consuming and offsetting what you consume and what you are emitting in carbon. Make sense? Is that clear for you so far? Good. Now, there are plenty of new companies that are trying to help in this space. We have here Echovardis, that they have these metrics of the environment, labor and human rights, ethics, sustainable procurement, all embedded in the systems that the companies operate. They have it embedded in everything the company does. We have blockchain technology that's being used to trace raw material in a way that makes it simple. For instance, plastic, agriculture, and metals. So the blockchain can tell me from the point of use in all the steps of the production of that product, how these materials, the raw material, is being handled, and where this is going after consumption. So blockchain could be a great technology to support that. And at the end of the day, we need supply chains that are resilient. It means that from design to operate, we build it to be agile, we build it to be productive, and also to connect all the parties in a sustainable way. I'll give you now some examples of how artificial intelligence, how the superpowers of artificial intelligence can help you become a more resilient organization, how you can be more resilient in the kind of products and services you build. And to do so, imagine when a business system can see. That's what artificial intelligence can bring us. Here is an example that is very simple, where the artificial intelligence can look at your picture and immediately recognize who you are and give you a feeling of, you know, this person is in our system, is not in our system, is a happy customer or unhappy customer. So the artificial intelligence can recognize that. Or if you want to use that to look into spaces and anonymize the individuals, but know the movements of that space, the machine intelligence, the artificial intelligence can look into that as well. Or if you have an area that you need to make sure that is not transpassed, immediately the machine can see and react into those things. Or for parking technology, a machine can look into that and understand from all the parking spots how you can manage that space in a more intelligent way. So all of this is because artificial intelligence can help business systems to see how you can use that in your idea, in the way you're going to solve the problem that you're looking at. But also, the systems can listen. The same technology can be applied for listening. Autosense is a company that we've been supporting, and basically what they do is to have sensors around the city. And from those sensors, they can listen through the technology situations that's happening, maybe in an area where there is no camera installed, so only the sound is available. And through the sound and the recognition of the pattern of that sound, as you can see here, you can determine activities like a police that is coming to that area or not. So when the machine can listen, you can use that superpower to help you solve the problem that we saw in the Sustainable Development Goals. Now, speech. When you are using WhatsApp, when you're using text, the machine also is able to look into that text and do something with that. We are using that with Amazon, Alexa, and all those assistants. It translates whatever you say to text and already immediately use that for connecting to the systems. So imagine an insurance company. When you want to do your insurance, instead of talking to an individual, you go and talk to a chatbot. And that chatbot will do all the process of renewing or starting a new insurance policy for you. Or grocery. We have a chatbot called Charlie. So if you want to have grocery, instead of going to the shop or going to the website, you just go to WhatsApp or Messenger and you start typing, I need bread. And from that, you can start paying and get your bread in your doorstep right away. So all of that because the machines can read the text and deal with that. So that's where the power of artificial intelligence comes into play. In IT, so if you're working on IT and you need to fix your computer, instead of calling the IT department, you can basically have a chatbot that will get it done for you in a magical way. So artificial intelligence gives us this sense of magic. This one here is a great example of the intelligence of the system when you send a concern, you send an email, where that mail goes. When there is a complaint coming to your company, how you handle that complaint. The machine intelligence can look into that text and direct to the people that can solve the problem faster. So another area that we can think of is the combination of all those capabilities with robots. Imagine robots in warehouses that are actually doing some of the work that a human would do, but in a more efficient way. So that's what we see. So if the robot can see and can listen and can operate in different scenarios, it can work 24/7. This is in a warehouse. So the picker. So I go and pick a product from one side and bring to another side. Why having a human to do so? I can have a robot that is self-driving and that can see and that can listen and that goes around the warehouse. Do you see? The technology is available. It's possible to use the technology to do and solve so many problems. In this case here, we are connecting sensors to the clothes. What do you think can be done when you connect a sensor to a cloth? Any idea? Yes.
If someone is diving, wants to dive, it can be a locator and it can also know the amount of oxygen is left inside his equipment.
For drivers.
Divers.
Divers. You can use that for divers. Very good example. Any other example? Hmm?
like if heart patients are driving, and because some people may be having a heart attack or something while they're driving, so in case something like that happens, they'll have a sensor, or where even if they're walking, that'll like send off an SOS that they had a stroke, they fainted, and come get help.
That's exactly what's going to happen here. So we are using that kind of technology in Japan with the drivers of buses. And while they are driving, we are measuring the fatigue. We are measuring, how the driver is feeling while conducting so many people. And that is able to reduce dramatically the number of accidents that involves that many people. So again, technology is available. The easiest part to solve right now is the technology. That's why I'm not teaching you the technology today. I'm not showing you how to code that technology, because the technology exists, is accessible. More than ever, in cloud computing, you can access that. However, your creativity, your ability to think of a sensor and connect that sensor to drivers of buses to reduce accidents on the street, this is where we want you to put your mind towards, right? So you are the ones that will solve the problems like that. If you think at scale, if we have an entire city connected, right, you will have this kind of visualization. You will be able to see at every inch of a city, from satellites in the sky all the way to the roads, everything you can measure through this data and technology. Yes.
So talking about cities in general, why don't we follow the city of Singapore in its approach to sustainability, which is a successful curriculum and has results and actual results?
Yeah.
Singapore is like a really good example. Why do we need to create new modern plans where we do have an actual one? We could develop like new plans depending on that. Why are we creating our own ones?
Look, this is a technology that we applied in China, for instance. And through that technology, we presented to the government of Dubai, and they are looking into using the same technology in Dubai. So you're right. I think the world is running that race, and we need to start using the technology at the best, because the technology exists. Now, how the leadership of a country, of a city, will use that technology is a different story. We're lucky to live in a city, in a country, that the leadership is using all technologies available in order to improve the quality of life of everybody. Right? But that's sometimes not the same in different countries. So yes, Singapore is an example, but Dubai is also a great example. Abu Dhabi, great examples in Abu Dhabi. And the technology is not the limitation, because they know that the technology is there. They want you guys to be here today to develop yourself, because they know you are the future of this place. So when you know how to use this technology, when you have the creativity to use that technology, then we can achieve the potential that they're looking for.
Then why aren't they teaching us these things? Why are we like having long-term plans? We need short-term results and long-term plans.
Well,
Like our plans, okay, it might be a really good plan for technology, innovation, creativity, all of that. And that's not a problem. But we'll be having a long-term result. Like the results won't be showing in this generation. Why wouldn't we have short-term results, like have them within 1 year, 5 years, and that's not a problem, and a long-term, like of following that plan? Am I reaching my point?
so companies, when they plan ahead, they will have horizons in what they do. Usually it's called Horizon 3 innovation. On Horizon 1 innovation, you use some of the technology that we see here to solve problems right here and right now. This is Horizon 1 innovation. Then you have Horizon 2 innovation, which are technologies that exist. They haven't been implemented at scale, but they exist. And now you start using that to improve the existing infrastructure or services you have. And then you have Horizon 3 technology, which is the very futuristic approach, 10 to 20 years. It's like quantum computing. Imagine that quantum computing will solve amazing problems for humankind, right? But right now, it's in research. So maybe in 5 to 10 to 15 years, we will have the ability to use quantum computing in order to solve some of those problems. But when we look at Internet of Things, like those sensors that are connected, this is Horizon 1. You can start connecting everything in your business, in your organization, using Internet of Things because the technology is available right now. So yes, we have sometimes limitation, right? But that limitation is always connected to the leadership because most of the technology that we need to solve most of the problems, it's available already. And that can be accelerated with new technology that's being developed. Make
Thank
sense?
you.
Now, one big question that we'll have when it comes to using artificial intelligence to solve this problem is what we call the AI explainability. Anybody wants to tell me what AI explainability means? Want to give it a try? You have the mic, so maybe you give it a try. So AI explainability, what does that mean?
I think expanding with creative solutions.
Creative solutions, anybody else? Go ahead.
To explore the potential of AI in the modern day and the future.
Explore the potential of AI, that's a good one.
I'm not quite sure, but I think is how you express your ideas and explain it to the artificial intelligence. Where, for example, for the driver's thing, you can be like, if the driver's heartbeats are below this, do the following processes maybe?
That's also a good one. But actually, it's beyond that, because you will start using artificial intelligence algorithms to solve problems, right? And more often than not, you will need an explanation. Imagine an AI applied to a hospital, right? So patients will come, and the decision of what's the patient that's going to be a priority will come from an artificial intelligence algorithm. And let's say you have someone that you love that was not prioritized. You will want an explanation, isn't it? Let's say there is a car that is running on autopilot, an AI that is driving that car. And the car will have to make a decision in an accident situation, either go through a direction of a person or another person because there is a crowd. What happens? If there is an accident with that car, and hopefully there won't be any accidents, but let's say there is an accident, whoever that participated in that scenario will want an explanation. So what happened? What is the decision of this algorithm? How that affects our life? So if you are the CEO, the president of a company, and the algorithm decides to prioritize selling for one region and not for another, right? You will want an explanation why. Do you understand what I mean? So there is power in using artificial intelligence, but at the same time, there is also the need for us humans to understand how this technology is making decisions. Yes.
The scenario that you just explained with the car, that's actually already a thing. MIT made this thing called Moral Machine, and you can actually go onto the website and feed data on what do you want the car to do in many different scenarios where there's a brake failure, so it either hits people or the barrier, and it uses that data to program actual cars and help them make better decisions to save the most lives.
There we go. People don't? People don't use websites.
I'm being realistic. Everyone would like an easier way to find a solution for anything. And going into a website might be a problem. I'm being honest, like, especially in phones and not laptops. Thank you. I'm giving you an advice. I'm not criticizing.
Yeah.
It's a brilliant idea and I support you, but having a website, it's kind of a like long thing to do. You need to go to the website and then Safari. It's a long process. I'm being honest. I'm having my own project, and I think having an app or like a direct thing to do is way more easier to deal with like than websites. Am I reaching my point?
So access to information must be easy. I think this is the bottom line. And when there is a decision happening from an algorithm, you want all the details of that. And there will be jobs in the future of people that actually take that explanation and give that explanation. So the AI must run, but there is a person that will be responsible to give an explanation of how that AI is running. So this is what we have to think about. Anytime you envision to use artificial intelligence in any of your projects, you must to imagine how you're going to explain the way the artificial intelligence is working, because that's part of the process itself. Yes.
I once saw a video that the developers who actually create the AI to make choices, they have a great influence over what the choices will be depending on how they code it. So sometimes there are biases in the code. So sometimes facial recognition does not recognize people with darker skin. And that was one of the problems that I forgot the name of the person she was trying to deal with, and she's actually had many projects that work with companies like Google and others trying to improve facial recognition. So in that sense, I think the developers also need to have their code cross-checked and see if there's any biases in it.
Absolutely. Explanation again, right? So everything that happens that is without the control of a person must be explained. Is this doing a good job or not? Is this a good decision or not? Is the algorithm trained to the current situation or not? Yes.
So, speaking of explaining the artificial intelligence decision to the public, so what are the factors that would make it easier for the public to trust that decision, that that is the right decision taken at that specific situation?
So it's an auditing process, right? So if you think of any process, you need auditing. Is this up to date? Is this taking into consideration all the parameters that must be taken into consideration? Is there data enough to make that decision? So constantly checking the validity of an AI will be part of the process. It's not only envisioning an AI, testing it for the first time. It's about always rechecking the ability of that AI to solve the problem again and again. Fair enough? Let me move on. I want to enter in the last area that would be important for us to understand in the world of AI for sustainability, which is the desirability. How we use innovation to tap into these green consumers. And in here, we have done a research. And in that research, we looked into different people in Italy, Spain, and other countries. And there are three things that people expect from a sustainable future. Number one is transparency. So transparency is going to be the key attribute for the future. If you're building something, if you have a project, if you bring transparency to your project, this is something that is expected going forward. Number two, people are telling us that they would pay more if a product or service is actually done in a sustainable way. So that myth that the cost is only, you will sell only if you have the lowest cost, it's not true for a sustainable future. And also, they're looking for community. They want to be part of something bigger. You know, building a brand that has a community around it will create loyalty. So those are the three attributes that we learned from this survey. And here, it's important for us to explore the DEI, the diversity, equity, and inclusion, how the systems can create a safe place for all employees of different nationalities, gender, generations, and geographies to learn from each other. So this is what you want to implement using this kind of technologies. Systems that can help you deal with the gender bias and analyze a job description and all the applicants of that job description, and through artificial intelligence do a correct matchmaking of the right person for the right job in that specific location. Also here, it's about inclusion and using the systems to connect those new hires to the right people and content. Imagine you go and start working in a company right now. How do you find the people you need to connect? How do you find the content you need to learn? So the technology will have a great deal of impact in your life when you're starting a new company. And artificial intelligence will be the tool to connect you to the right people and to the right content. And finally, uncover this unconscious bias. Understanding from your company, everybody where they sit, the calibration and compensation, so that when you are receiving your compensation, your bonus, your salary, you receive that in a fair way, because the artificial intelligence can help you deal with the equity, which is a fair and equitable treatment, access and opportunity, and advancement for all people in our organization. Another thing that is important here is to constantly listen from the experience of your employees and from your customers. Right? Those kind of surveys that tells you what's the feeling about your team, what's the feeling of people in finance, in HR, in sales, in marketing, in IT. So understanding from each one of them how they feel and using that information to go back and help improve their experience is fundamental. Going forward, the operational information with the experience information and the merge of that X of experience and O of operations will give you an edge of how you deal with everybody that is involved in your business and how you create those products. Here's a great example as well of a company, Coach Holding, that is using this technology in a proper way in order to create a better experience. They want to understand the concerns of 95,000 workers. They created a post of collecting responses of 25,000 people and do actions on it. Not only listening, but immediately put that understanding into practice. This is a great example of how to do it. And as part of this process of understanding people, understanding the future of your industry, you will face the need of reskilling. We're talking about artificial intelligence and the shift of things. Here, employment will have different ways of work. So some jobs will disappear, new jobs will come up. How you make sure that the people in the business across the world, they are up to the skills that is required for today's requirements and for the future requirements. Reskilling of employment is a huge part of it as well. And finally, social entrepreneurship. There is more than ever the need for people like you and me to come up with ideas that are not only profitable, but have an impact to the world, a social impact to the world. Here is a movement around social entrepreneurship, creating a social enterprise that does good. And there is huge investments going towards ideas that are into that direction. One thing that we have done in our company to solve that issue is to launch what we call 5 and 5 by 25 initiative. This is where we will spend more money on buying from companies that are social enterprises and diverse suppliers. So we would source from companies, we would buy from companies that demonstrate that not only they offer the product or the service that we need, but also they are using their resources to do good for the world. So the way I can buy from them, which is good, it will be in a virtual cycle good for the world as well. So use your procurement power in order to do good for the world. Now, let's think about this rise to a sustainable future. When you focus on compliance, you're dealing basically with the license to operate, with better products and new markets. This is one group of achievements you can have if you just focus on the compliance, basically making sure you're doing the right thing. If you go to the next level where you have efficiency, and you build efficiency in everything you do, you not only create a competitive edge for your business, but also you focus on cost savings and margin improvements. So it's a complete picture of what you do. And finally, if you focus on innovation, you will achieve the expectations of the green consumers. You will be able to find new investments that have into consideration the impact, the positive impact you have to the world, and also you will be able to attract loyal people, right? So going forward, attracting the talents that is required is going to be difficult. So if you have a differentiation because you are rising for a sustainable future, that talent will want to be part of your company. And we use these ESG factors that we learn here to aspire to help companies to embed sustainability into their core businesses. This is the new advantage of the future. We call that the sustainability advantage. Embedding sustainability in everything we do and making sure that all the environmental, social, and governance factors are embedded in everything we do. With that, I want you to remember, responsible for what? Leaving this room today, you need to ask your question. What are you responsible for? Responsible for whom? What kind of people? What is the niche that you will dedicate your life to be responsible for? At the end of the day, our purpose is to help people. So what are the people that you will be helping with all the knowledge you are acquiring from this session and from many sessions that we'll have here? And finally, who is responsible? You saw that Earth is calling for help. Who is responsible? It's easy to think it's someone else, but I tell it's all of us. We are here and we have awareness and understanding of the situation. We are smart people, we are intelligent people, so we can do something to make a difference. So who is responsible? I am responsible. And I hope you also feel that you are responsible, so that when you take care of people and you do something that is meaningful, and you do that with purpose, you will achieve the purpose of this session today. With that, I will open for questions. And remember that there is also, more gaps in the world when we talk about this. 6% of Fortune CEOs in the 500 companies are female, only 6%. So if you are a female in the room, we want you to become a CEO of companies. There is a huge gap here. 70% or plus Black ethnic minority. So there is a need as well for diversity in the workplace. And finally, 87% of the US workplace, they also have disability-specific inclusion, so it's required. So there is more to do. We want to leave here with this feeling that there is so much more to do. And remember to balance the top line, the bottom line with the green line. That's your mission, leaving this room. If you're going to business, if you have a project, you need to incorporate this third dimension of success. Was that useful for you so far? Any further questions? Yes.
Blockchain would help to transfer the raw material. According to my information, blockchain is a currency like Bitcoin. So what exactly is what you meant by that?
So blockchain as a technology is not only the Bitcoin network. There are different kind of blockchain technologies over there that they have the immutability and the traceability capabilities that we need to look into the entire value chain and do the traceability solutions we spoke here. So it's not only as a cryptocurrency that we are looking at blockchain, but also the data management it has in the blockchain, which is distributed. So everybody that participates in a distributed kind of value chain could be contributing to that chain of information, which doesn't need to be in a Bitcoin by itself. Yes.
You said earlier to encourage companies and markets to use more sustainable patterns in their own business path. Why don't we force them to do things? Like we force them to have a sustainable path. Why do we need to encourage them? Because like we've been encouraging them, as the woman said, it's a problem. We've been talking for like over 3 decades. Okay, but
Can you speak just a bit louder?
okay, sorry. I'm saying, why do we need to encourage companies to have a more sustainable patterns instead of forcing them?
That's a very good one. So why companies have created the problem in the first place? It's a good question. I don't think they didn't have a blueprint of success like we have now. I don't think they had the understanding of the impact. And if they had the understanding of the impact, they didn't have any incentive from government to stop them. But that's changing.
Then we don't need to say we need to encourage them. We need to say that we need to share more knowledge. They don't have the knowledge. Then people who are opening business right now, they don't have enough knowledge about sustainable and other factors that matter in their own business.
Yep, that's my mission here. Share the knowledge and push us on the right direction.
Thank you for that.
The thing is, can I not?
No, it's better because then we can listen.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
The thing is, I kind of do not disagree with most of the things you've mentioned today. At first, like you can't force a company to change or do anything because like we have those workshops for encouragement. So the long-term plans that you're not seeing now, like those little things are adding up in order to get the bigger picture. You know, when you're saying in those, every company are speaking long term and not short. The thing is, they're speaking long term to show you what they're aiming for, and then they're doing those small things. Like there are different packages right now in businesses, and there are different products I think they use in order to share or like to make people aware of the option of sustainability and all that. So technically, you can't force a company to change if they don't want to
But
change.
like a really little percent of those companies who achieve and do as you said, like the most of them don't even follow or care about the sustainability. To be honest, if I'm opening my own business, I wouldn't even think about that as long as it's not affecting me and the business I'm trying to open. I'm not talking in a selfish point, but I'm trying to say, what if I'm opening a business, putting myself in that position? That means that I have a lack of knowledge. That's what I'm trying to say.
That's why you should educate yourself.
Yeah, that's why we are all here. But think about this, right? The same way I'm talking to you that are starting your careers, right? I'm also talking to very senior leaders in the world. The only difference is that I'm using a tie. But the message is the same. They are all trying to understand how they're going to deal with all that information that you learned here. So actually getting all of that firsthand. Because the fact is that every year they will have to report on the good that they are doing. If they don't have data to report, and they don't have tool to report, and if they don't do the good, they will be caught inact. It means that they will lose their license to operate. So there is no option anymore, right? I hope we had that many, many years ago so that the problem and the implication of climate change would not be that bad as we have today. But thankfully, since the Paris Agreement, right, we've been looking into progress and regulation, especially coming from Europe, where businesses will not have an easy time anymore. They will need to do the things we heard here. If they don't do it, they are out of business. Yes.
Last session yesterday, you mentioned that SAP was 100% based on the cloud. like most software companies, it's difficult for them not to be based on the cloud. But the thing with clouds is that they have huge data centers that are sometimes not that energy efficient because the hard drives that they use to store the data heat up so much that they have to improve their ventilation system. How soon do you think, like, what is your prediction on when these will become more cost efficient, like maybe 25% more cost efficient and energy efficient?
I don't have a prediction per se, but I know for a fact that anybody that wants to run a data center will have to run it in a sustainable way. Right? They will have to make sure that it's a green data center. That's why SAP, from the beginning, started doing everything in a sustainable way because they know regulation would come. It's a company based in Germany, right? So in Europe, all these taxonomy, all these requirements is actually in place. So as a German company, they would not be able to operate without doing this. So going forward, the entire world will have to face a situation where either they apply those techniques to be sustainable or they will not be able to operate.
I also, you mentioned that you were excited about new quantum computers and how they will come out soon. How will they affect all of this? Like, what will they bring?
Say that again?
How will quantum computers improve the sustainability of businesses? Like, how will businesses use them?
So the faster we can predict how things goes, the better for us to react to it. That's why quantum computing will be great, because it will give us prediction, right? With enough data, you can give a quantum computing the ability to tell us what is the better direction to go. So that's why I'm excited. With quantum computing, we will be able to react faster to situations.
Okay, thank you.
This side is very talkative. What about this side? Are you guys happy with the session? Go ahead.
I'd like to talk about the point they mentioned. Why do companies not make their products more green, basically? So you mentioned green premium before. So if a company is going for the green pathway, the green premium will increase, making the green customers have to pay more. The thing is, the reason companies don't go for this is other companies don't do it because the price for a carbon capture device, which is in the first scope I think you mentioned, is very expensive. So if they do that, they're going to lose money because people often go for cheaper. That's all they care about. But it all goes down to education, as you said. If we educate more people about this, that's how this problem will be solved.
Education, but also regulation.
Yeah.
The biggest compelling reason for us to have this conversation right now is regulation. Right? Right now, we are in talks with the Ministry of Climate Change and the Environment, and also the Ministry of Economy. If you talk to both of them, you will find out they are going through legislation to force companies that operate in the UAE to be more sustainable. They are passing a circular economy law. Circular economy law means that every company operating in this region will have a responsibility to work in a circularity. If they bring a product to the United Arab Emirates that are not circular, that product will not be welcome. So basically, there is a cost, yes, but if that's a required cost, it's the cost of doing business, they will have to do so. Smart will be the ones that can use the technology to reduce that cost. This is where we need to do, because it's not about if will be required to be sustainable. It's about when are you going to be able to apply those things and create the efficiencies to be profitable at the level you always wanted to be.
I think politicians have to work on this more as well. Like they can force the companies to put the carbon capture device where the green premium will become less. So that's a very good solution they can go for now. However, it's not optional at the moment. And I think making electricity is the most greenhouse gas producer, if that's the word. So yeah, I think politics or politicians play a huge role in this. And AI can help, of course, but regulation and teaching the people, education. Yeah, I think it all comes down to that.
And we have a role as well, as leaders, right? As people, to force the change, because now you understand it. A lot of people don't see the connection between the artificial intelligence technology and sustainability, but now you do. You have connected in your brain a vision about the future that not many people have. So you have that responsibility to go to the government, to go to a company, and to do your contribution right now. And that's what I'm doing. In the minute that I understood that we have this big issue ahead of us, what did I do? I directed my entire career, everything that I do, my purpose of life, towards educating and helping business leaders to use those technologies to solve the problem. Our window to solve the problem is very short. We're talking about 1 decade, or even less than 1 decade. So when you go to business now, you will probably be able to start a company, to start a project. And when you do so, if you apply those things, you're not only doing good for your career, for your life, but also you're doing good for the world. And that's the reason why we're here. We want to do good for the world. We want to use technology with a purpose. Question?
It's actually a comment. She was like, why don't you force companies to apply those regulations? Companies don't, most of them don't really care. What they care about is the cost. That's why we've reached this point. So what the government's trying to do is they are willingly forcing them to apply to those regulations by the license, by the benchmark, by all the rules they place in. So they are forced to care in order to continue. And for the green gas thing, so what the government has done a couple of years ago is for anyone who's building any new building, house, company, they'd have to have a percentage of the electricity taken from the solar panels. So that is one of the moves, and change cannot be made in 1 day. So it's a step that's made by everyone, government and people.
Absolutely. All right, with that, I really want to thank you for your time today. I think it was amazing to have this experience to share with you, to listen to your questions. I will stay some few minutes after the end. We always do a picture in the end, so if you would like to come to the front, we'll do a final picture to conclude the session. Maybe you guys can come for us to conclude the session as well.